Going into the final shape, Bungie's already laid out their plans for what they want classes to kind of be doing. Titans are CC heavy and punchy, Hunters are slippery, and Warlock's identity is summoning loads of lore guys through abilities. But with this build, I'm wanting to take the class in a different direction. Still very ability heavy and reliant on grenades, just not your utility ones. I really want to start this off by saying I think this will be the best and strongest of the Theorycraft builds I do. When I'm making a build, I'll have these light bulb moments where I'll be like, okay, this works with this and interacts with them, which gives me this, which lets me loop them, so on and so forth. If I have one of those moments when I'm making a build, I know that I'm onto something. When I was theorycrafting for this build, it was like I was having one of those moments every 15 minutes. Everything interacts with every other part of the build. Everything locks together to make something that sounds truly strong. So my gut is telling me that I'm looking at a very powerful build. We've got Weaken, Devour, Volatile, Unravel, Tangles, Restoration, Radiant, Scourge, Ignitions, and like any other Prismatic build, access to Transcendant for a weapon damage boost on top of Radiant, damage resist, a grenade that slows, freezes and suppresses, as well as ability refreshes on Transcendent activation. But I just want to say two things. This is going to be a long video because there's so many working parts and I really want to cover them well, so you can put this on in the background or maybe watch it over a few sit-ins, but it's really worth your time to watch all of it, as you'll get a much better understanding of how each part of the build works together. Secondly, I'm about to go into some disclaimers type stuff, but if you really don't care about any of them and you're just here for the build, then skip to the timestamp on screen. I've got to get this out of the way, otherwise I know I'll get comments about it. What we're working with is a Verity's Brow and Nezarec Sin grenade spam build, and I have to start this whole thing off with an answer to a very valid question that I'm sure people will have. Why no Sunbracers? I think with this combo of exotics, as well as from Fragments, Aspects, Super and Transcendent, you'll already be throwing a lot of grenades, trust me. But my main concern is that I genuinely don't know if Sunbracers will be coming to the final shape, because it feels like they'd actually break the game's balance with how easily classes would be able to proc Sunbracers, with Titans and Warlocks having melees with 3 base charges with Strand, and Hunters having Threaded Spike or Combination Blow. It feels too spammy to be balanced. This is also before we think about interactions like what happens with Transcendent grenades. It genuinely sounds too game breaking, and I'm not ready to dedicate an entire video's worth of work to a build that I'm not at all confident will be hitting the game on final shape launch day. But for the actual disclaimer part, this is a Theorycraft build. Where I can, I've tried to use as much info that we already know about from the developer gameplay preview, the Prismatic deep dive post, and game knowledge. But there will be a lot of speculation, what ifs and maybes in this video, and that is coming from 3 things we don't know. Firstly, we don't have the full Fragment set yet, so I can't be sure what I'm saying about Fragments are the best possible options. If Bungie releases any info on them before final shape launch, check the pinned comment below for what I'd recommend. Secondly, we haven't had access to stacking exotics with blended subclasses before, so some of the numbers here could very well be wrong when I count them. And finally, we don't know the full extent to which these exotics will be coming to the game. We're getting the spirit of exotics, which translates to the important parts of an exotic and not the full exotic perk, so we can only take estimated guesses at the power and abilities that these exotics have. Furthermore, we can pretty safely assume we'll be seeing Verity's Brow, as we saw for literally a second in the trailer, death throws being procced. But we don't know whether Nezarec Sin will be coming to the game, and whether we can stack the 2 exotics on one class item. All of this is just to say, take everything with a heavy grain of salt and some skepticism on whether it will be coming to the final shape. If you're joining back up here from the start, it was a small lie, there's still a TLDR disclaimer. Don't take what you're hearing here as gospel, it could very well be wrong. And if you get to the end of the video and you think it's been earned, any likes and subs are super appreciated. They let me know I'm making stuff that people actually want to see. But with that out of the way, you came for a build. Let's get into it. The most important part of this whole setup And what is going to be the engine that fuels most of our interactions is Feed the Void, which gives an enhanced version of Devour, which on kill gives a full heal over the normal 100 HP heal, extends the duration of Devour, and gives grenade energy based on the tier of enemy we kill, and base grenade cooldown. Importantly, exclusively on Prismatic, Feed the Void has been changed from its original version, which is on Void ability kills gives enhanced Devour, to now on any ability kill gives enhanced Devour. And we can't really talk about Devour without the grenade we're using, as it directly plays into it, but for this build we're using the Vortex grenade. On Prismatic, it's Warlock's only real option as far as damaging grenades go, but from some fragments I'll go over later on, it does have functionality, just past being a damaging grenade. For your other abilities, you're going to want to take Arcane Needle, which has 3 charges at base and unravels any target it hits. This melee does have some unique cooldowns, where depending on how many charges you have, you'll regen more melee energy. At 2 charges, you get 100% faster regen, at 1 charge it's 33% faster, and at 0 it's on normal cooldown. Main reason we're taking this over anything else is that this is how we're going to balance out our Transcendence bar, which fills up on dealing both light and dark damage. Grenades are our light damage, melee is our dark. We do though have 2 more abilities that are building into light damage in Phoenix Dive, which gives Cure, and Helion, the new solar aspect, which on using our class ability, gives a solar buddy, which is the main reason we're running Phoenix Dive, because of its lower cooldown compared to your rifts. Helion lasts for 20 seconds and shoots these solar projectiles that apply Scourge and deal a chunk of AoE damage. The reason we've got Helion is because a lot of the other aspects Warlock has go against synergy in our build. Weaver's Cool just isn't amazing, Bleak Watcher takes away from our Vortex, Lightning Surge gets rid of dark damage in the build, so that leaves Helion as our last valid option. And for this build, the 2 exotic options you're going to take here are Nezarec's Sin and Verity's Brow. I do want to say though that I think these exotics will be seeing tweaks on the exotic class item. Both of them currently interact with a specific element, with Verity's needing weapon kills matching your subclass, and Nezarec's needing void kills. Both of these effects don't seem in spirit with the identity of Prismatic, which is why I think they'll be changed to elemental weapon kills and elemental kills respectively. And I'm not just pulling this claim out of nowhere either. During the gameplay reveal, we saw literally for just a second and a half Verity's Brow, but the player is using Prismatic, getting kills with a solar sword, but still getting death throws stacked, which is Verity's perk. And that makes me think that Nezarec's Sin will be changed in a similar way to push more the multi-subclass identity that Prismatic is going for. As for the exotic effect themselves, Verity's on Prismatic exclusively gives on elemental weapon kills a stack of death throws, which lasts 11 seconds and stacks up to 5 times. For each stack you receive, you'll get 50% base grenade regen and 20% more grenade damage. Activating a grenade with death throws near a teammate will give them Feel the Flame, which gives them 10 times grenade regen speed for 5 seconds. Although as the exotic class item is supposed to capture the spirit of an exotic, we might not see the Feel the Flame benefit added to the class item. And assuming Nezarec's Sin will work as I said before, it should breed elemental kills, give Abyssal Extractors for 2.5 seconds, stacking up to 20 seconds, giving 300% base grenade and melee regen, and 200% additional base class and super ability regen. Again, the exotic probably won't be on the class item as its full version, so we might not see the class or super regen here. One unique interaction we've got here as well is that the passive ability regen given by Arcane Needle depending on how many charges you have, stacks with the melee regen given by Nezarec's Sin. I'll put the numbers on screen and put a comparison on in the background, but you just need to understand that if you're juggling your first melee charge, you're only going to have to wait around 10 seconds for it to be back up. And all of this is before we've even talked about Transcendant, which is where this build is absolutely going to skyrocket in power. I have to assume that our exotics are going to affect our abilities during Transcendence, meaning we'll hopefully be getting the bonus damage and cooldown from Verity's, as well as the bonus cooldown from Nezarec's. This is already the cooldown of a Transcendent grenade. It recharges so quickly, so if we add into the mix our exotics, it's going to feel like we've got some Bracer's levels of grenade cooldowns. And if you look at the speed of Withering Blade regen 2, that melee is on a 100-second cooldown, and it looks like it's recharged in 5. Arcane Needle is exactly the same regen speed at base, but going back to the passive ability regen it gets depending on how many charges you already have, I think we could be looking at potentially 1 or 2 seconds of Arcane Needle having to be fully recharged again. And you've also got to remember that dealing grenade damage will increase melee regen, and melee damage increases grenade regen during Transcendent, meaning we can spam them even more than what I just mentioned. And if Devour gives grenade regen during Transcendence, that's another way we can get even more grenade energy. As for Warlock's Transcendent grenade, it looks extremely strong, applying slow, which can stack up enough to freeze, then it implodes, dealing damage and suppressing targets, which turns this into both a crowd control tool as well as a damage tool. But one thing we don't know is whether the grenade will interact like how Vortex and Solar Grenade currently do, where they can't be stacked on top of each other. If they can, Transcendence could potentially also be used during DPS rotations, but if it doesn't stack, this is where we are going to be hard abusing the new super, Song of Flame. We don't really know a lot about this super at the moment. I think that it increases Incinerator Snap bolts up to 6 and Celestial Fire bolts up to 4. We can be fairly sure it makes allies' solar weapons apply Scourge, because that was mentioned in the reveal trailer.
You're so overflowing with this energy that you are also giving it to your allies, allowing them to have their solar weapons supercharged, applying Scorch when they're shooting.
And it looks like it gives Radiant for the entire duration of this super. And on using an ability you get the Song of Flame buff, which can stack, but what that does I'm not too sure. But what we do know is that it has a unique grenade during the super, which seeks out targets and applies Scourge and is on a 2-second cooldown, meaning we can spam this grenade. With Verity's buff and Nezarac's, we'll hopefully be able to further drop the cooldown of this grenade and increase the damage of it as well. But for both Transcendence as well as Song of Flame, you can add Demolitionist rockets into the rotation and just grenade and rocket spam bosses. It'll feel like you're spamming rockets as quick as a Radiant Dance Machine Hunter, but without having to be up close, as well as the added bonus of grenades that'll be damage boosted by Verities that can either ignite or slow, freeze and suppress. And these combos only get better when we add Fragments into the mix. I do have to say though that with the combination of aspects we have, we don't yet know how many Fragment slots we get. So I'm going to cautiously recommend 5 Fragments, but just be aware that it could change to be something different. And as well, we don't have the full Fragment set yet, so if Bungie releases any new info on new Fragments before the launch, and it's something I recommend for the build, you'll see that as the pinned comment. But the first Fragment you absolutely must take for this build is Facet of Dominance, which causes your Void Grenades to weaken and your Arc Grenades to jump. Obviously, we're using the Void Grenade part of this Fragment, but the weaken effect should be applied to both our base Vortex Grenade, as well as the Transcendent Freezing the Singularity Grenade. If you're going into a boss DPS rotation, you can throw out a Vortex Grenade for weaken before supering if you're doing a Song of Flame DPS rotation, or just Vortex, then go Transcendent and start spamming the Freezing Singularity if that grenade is able to stack up on itself. Facet of Hope is the next Fragment you'll want, which is going to make getting your Solar Buddy much easier, as whilst you have an elemental buff, your class ability recharges faster. We don't know how much faster, but as Devour is going to be up almost permanently, we're going to be seeing this Fragment getting a lot of uptime. Facet of Bravery is also going to be a really good choice here, where kills with grenades grant volatile rounds to your void weapons, and kills with a power of melee grant unraveling rounds to your strand weapons. This will mean as long as we're hitting kills with our abilities, which we should be doing loads, we'll have unravel and volatile going off pretty much constantly. Facet of Purpose is your next pick, which on picking up an orb gives either Amplified, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Void Overshield, based on the damage type of your equipped super. So in this case it'll be Restoration, which is just going to be for a bit more survivability outside of Devour. This last Fragment is more of a flex pick, but I recommend Facet of Dawn, which gives Radiant on powered melee hits, and Radiant for you and your teammates on powered melee final blows. Again, 10-second melee cooldown. This will be up a lot, but if any important Fragments get released, this will be the one I'm probably switching out before any of the others. As for weapons you're going to want, make sure that your primary is Strand, your energy is Void, and that your heavy is either Void or Strand to benefit from Faceted Bravery. If you're going in for boss DPS rotations, make sure that you've got some kind of Demolitionist Rocket to chain in between throwing grenades as mentioned before. As for your mod setup, it's not going to be complicated. Ashes to assets on the helmet, with either one copy of Void or Strand Siphon, depending on your most common element. For arms, you'll want one copy of Firepower for Orbs, and 2 copies of Bolstering Detonation to cycle your Solar Buddy more. Chest will just be resistance mods for whatever activity you're going into. Legs will be either double or triple Void or Strand Surge, depending on your most common elements and your heavy. And class items should be 1 copy of Reaper, 1 copy of Time Dilation, and 1 copy of Outreach. For any other mod slots, add Stat Boost, with an aim of hitting 100 Resilience, and then 100 Discipline, and then after that, it's really up to you. Now, I can't speak loads on the gameplay of this build, obviously because it's not released yet, but try and juggle that first charge of your Arcane Needle, as it means that you can really spam your melee due to its increased ability regen. If you're going into a boss DPS rotation, try and make sure that you're going in with max stacks of Verities and as high a timer on Nezrak's Sin to spam more abilities. Also remember that you can extend your Death Throws timer just by killing 1 ad during a damage phase. As for anything else outside of that, this build really isn't that complicated. You'll be throwing a lot of grenades and you'll feel fairly indestructible because of Devour and Restoration from Facet of Purpose. And that's it for the build. I'll do a quick summary because I've done a lot of talking and there's been a fair bit to follow, but we've got 550% additional base grenade cooldown, a melee that can recharge in 10 seconds, 3 different types of grenades, 100% damage boost to all of those grenades, full heals on every kill, grenade energy on every kill, great uptime on volatile and unraveling rounds, and really strong DPS rotations. This build is one that I am for sure going to try chase down as soon as the final shape launches, because it not only sounds like a really strong build, but sounds really fun as well, which I think is always something important to try find in a build. Although, that's it from me. If you have thoughts on the build, let me know. Like, sub, yada yada yada, you get the gist. Titans, you're up next, but for now, that's about it from me.